So we've been talking for a few minutes about a major technological innovation, and the impact is huge, dwarfs Facebook. Now we're moving on to another area of success, innovation success in Texas, and that's cancer. So we'd like to talk about MD Anderson advancing science, discovery, and therapeutics in cancer care. And our next speaker is, of course, Dr. Peter Pisters, president of the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. Dr. Peter Pisters is a renowned cancer surgeon, researcher, professor, and hospital administrator. Before his current appointment, Dr. Pisters was Chief Executive Officer of the University Health Network in Toronto, Canada. He currently serves on the advisory board for the National Cancer Institute and is on the editorial board of the Journal of Clinical Oncology and Surgery. His research is focused on sarcomas, GI cancers, and other malignancies, has resulted in nearly 400 peer-reviewed and additional articles, book chapters, teaching aids, and others. Please welcome to the stage Peter Pisters.
Thank you.
Make any mistakes in the intro?
No, yeah, perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. What I'd like to do is just to walk you through a little bit of the changes underway at MD Anderson and to give you some examples of how we're bringing research into the community through tech transfer and commercialization, and a window into what we believe may be the biggest deal ever done by a U.S. university system to transfer technology, something that we did with Takeda in November of 2019. And I'll show you the technology behind that and give you some insights into how it's going to transform some aspects of cancer care for a variety of patient populations. So this is an excellent starting point for any conversation about MD Anderson and all the work that we do. All 22,000 of our employees are really anchored around this mission statement. And if you look at this closely, you can see the three legs of the stool that are common in academic medical center environments. In particular, you see patient care, research, and education. But I'd like to point out our commitment to prevention. And in many ways, we'd like to put ourselves out of business by focusing on prevention. We have 800 people looking at the science of prevention, looking at implementation science, and looking at how can we really bring evidence-based practices into health policy. You also see the geographic boundaries of our mission, which include, of course, our commitment to Texas and the needs that are very profound in our own state. And you can also see the basis for our national network of partnerships around the country and the international programming that we have in different parts of the world, including work that we have underway now where the counterpartner is the Minister of Health. And the program is really how do we develop a cancer control program for an entire country. We're very proud of our #1 status. Key elements of that really include our workforce and the commitment that they have to our mission. This week in Houston, we'll be seeing 1,000 new cancer patients that are coming to us. Patients are coming to us at the rate of about 1,000 new patients per week. And you can see that that drives our clinical research engine. It creates bioresources. It creates opportunities for researchers. And it creates amazing opportunities for us to commercialize a lot of the discovery coming out of our labs. Now, there are many ways to measure our contributions to science. Let me share a few of those with you. First, one way that academics might do this is by peer review science. And we're #1 in the number of awards from the NCI in the country. Another way to do it would be to look at the other end of this, and that would be FDA drug approvals for oncology. And you can see that since 2007, 72 of 130 drug approvals for oncology came in some way, shape, or form through MD Anderson. So it's really true to say that today, patients are receiving tomorrow's treatment at MD Anderson. Another way to look at this is the way in which we look into the future and the way in which we think about new themes in research. Some examples that I'll share with you today certainly include cellular therapy, where the product is no longer a compound that's diffused into a solution and administered through a vein. It's not a pill, it's a vial of genetically re-engineered white cells. Or the work that we've done in the microbiome. Who would have thought 15 years ago that the bacteria in your colon would be associated with human health, would be associated with acquisition of specific diseases, or would be associated with your response to immunotherapy? We understood that. We've made significant investments in microbiome research, realizing that that will unlock many of the mysteries, not only of cancer, but of other diseases. We've also invested in a series of translational platforms designed to accelerate discovery. We recruited 45 individuals from the pharmaceutical industry, have target identification, have small molecule development teams inside the organization, as well as antibody production capabilities that are at the level of the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, the last way that we could measure it, again, the way academics like to, is in terms of publications. And if we look only through a filter of high impact publications as measured by impact factor, you can see that we're publishing at the rate of 1.6 high impact factor papers per day during our last CCSG grant cycle. Now, when we look at the totality of the institutional strengths, some of them are summarized on this slide. We've got phenomenal 1,750 faculty. We have a national donor base that we see as co-investors in our mission to end cancer. We have a series of strategic industry alliances that I will allude to. And we've developed a migration to team-based science, recognizing that the historical model in academia, which is the individual athlete model, is not the only way to fuel discovery for societal benefit, and that we can accomplish more by uniting researchers around common goals, like the cure for breast cancer. So, at a meeting like this, I think it's very important for us to reflect on the uniqueness of Texas. The two preceding talks, I think, did a very good example, I think, of helping us to understand many of the unique aspects of our state. One of the things that we have to be cognizant of is the population change that's happening. And depending on which projections we use, we can see that our state is going to go from 28 million to over 50 million in a short period of time. So institutions like MD Anderson or the UT system or A&M need to get prepared for that reality. We also have one of the youngest populations in the nation, and the children in Texas deserve outstanding health care. They should be prevented from the ravages of cancer through vaccination. And they will need health care and education in order to ensure that our economy will continue to grow in the ways that it is now. At the moment, we have phenomenal economic growth that I think is understood and experienced by everybody in the room and is admired by 49 other states. That includes strong GDP, and it includes a record low unemployment here in our state. I also make the point internally and externally that Texas is a phenomenal home for MD Anderson. It's phenomenal because of our role in the UT system, because of the Permanent University Fund, because of the Permian Basin. And when we see the endowment of the UT system bypassing Yale University, being ranked as number 2 in the nation after Harvard, and you listen to the two preceding talks, we can really realize that a couple more good years in the Permian Basin and the UT system will pass Harvard University. All of those resources get reinvested in healthcare and education by state constitution. That is absolutely phenomenal for all of us. We developed talent acquisition programs that really allow us to bring intellectual capital to Texas and to MD Anderson. And we shouldn't forget about CPRIT. It's great to see a CPRIT session on this program. CPRIT has positioned the state of Texas as the second largest government funder of cancer research in the world. And it has enabled us to attract more than 180 scientists to Texas, including Dr. Allison, who came to MD Anderson and was recognized by the Nobel Prize in 2018. You can see that just for us alone, it's 22 scientists that came to join our organization. And as you know, they're not coming as individuals. They're coming with their research teams. Let's talk for a little bit about our Moonshots program. And really, when we framed this, we recognized the need that we had as an organization to move away from the individual athlete model and to create incentives for teams to organize around major societal problems. And if you look at the three essential elements of the program, they're listed here in these bullet points. It's a migration to team-based science by creating incentives and rewards for teams to come together with shared goals and modifying the promotion and tenure process so that we can really reward teams that come together in these ways. It's aided by an external advisory board so that we're bringing both academic and industry people to the institution to evaluate the program and provide independent assessment of the quality of the research. It wouldn't surprise any of the academics in the room to know that sometimes if you ask a department chair, what's the quality of research in your department, you're going to get a biased answer. We need independent evaluation, and then we need the business discipline to follow through in situations where we have high potential, high risk projects that deserve funding, and we have, for whatever set of reasons and circumstances, programs that haven't met milestones. Sometimes that happens in research. That's not the fault of the researcher, that's the way research works. So we need the ability to reallocate resources in the right settings, and that's aided by the external advisory board. So as you look at the flagship projects that we've developed, you can see that they're anchored around a whole series of different diseases, including some of the most challenging situations in oncology. We're talking about pancreatic cancer or glioblastoma, very significant diseases for which there haven't been many therapeutic gains in the last 25 years. We've developed a series of institutional platforms that I alluded to that really help to accelerate discovery and are available for the teams. And this has really accelerated a number of projects for which we could not receive NIH funding. As you would imagine, as ideas bubble up from these teams, some of these ideas are definitely worthy of NIH funding, but some study sections can't see the opportunities that our researchers can see, and we want to create resources for those teams to be able to work and to be able to do innovative projects. So let me give you one example of that. This comes out of our Moonshots platform. It's a new therapy designed for lymphoma patients. And what we're doing is using immunotherapy using genetically modified white cells. Let me give you the background for this. Some of you may have heard of this already. If you're not in medicine, it's referred to as CAR T-cell therapy. In essence, it involves a complicated process to take white cells from a cancer patient. This is an autologous process, so we have to take the patient's own white cells. They are shipped out to California, and in a facility at LAX, they're genetically re-engineered, clonally expanded, and then shipped back to Houston to be reinfused back into the same patient. That complicated, expensive supply chain adds significant cost to the treatment. The two commercially available products for this from Gilead Sciences and Novartis cost $375,000 and $475,000 for a single dose. Add to that the complexity and the toxicity of the therapy, which has to be administered as an inpatient, requires ICU availability, and you can see some of the challenges associated with it. So the standard CAR T therapy that's now commercially available and is very expensive to administer has these issues associated with it. The patient specificity, the autologous nature of this, the significant inpatient time and cost associated with administering the therapy, and then for the patient, the risk for what we call in medicine the graft versus host disease, where the immune system starts attacking normal tissues like your GI tract, your bladder, your brain, or your eyes. So there are issues at a societal level and issues at the individual patient level associated with the standard treatment. There's definitely a societal need for better treatments in the setting where we're talking about $375,000 or $475,000 per patient. We need something that can be administered in the outpatient setting, and we need something that is less toxic than the current approaches by Gilead Sciences and Novartis. So this created an opportunity for us to use another type of white cell, the natural killer cell, to create a system where we could create an off-the-shelf product manufactured from cord blood samples. We have one of the largest cord blood bank samples in the world in Houston. We use that to perform bone marrow transplants for patients who don't have a match, and we also use it, as this illustrates, for research purposes. The NIH didn't believe that you could genetically re-engineer NK cells, so they wouldn't support grant applications for this. But our Moonshots platform was designed specifically for this. One of the attractive elements of this is that NK cells don't cause graft versus host disease. So if you could find a way to genetically re-engineer NK cells and to clonally expand them, you could create an off-the-shelf solution that would not have the same toxicity profile as the standard treatment. And that's, in essence, what we did. So what you're looking at now is an example of a PET scan, a positron emission tomography scan, of a lymphoma patient that was part of the first phase 1 trial. And some of you who have medical background can immediately see that this image taken of the patient with their arms above their head shows significant uptake of the tracer in the lymph nodes in the neck, on both sides of the neck, in the armpits, throughout the abdomen, and in the groins. This is a patient who's had multiple lines of chemotherapy. When you do a first-in-man clinical trial, you can't give that as the first line of treatment. This is a patient who's going to die unless there's a home run. Here's the scan 30 days later. The lymphoma is gone, completely gone. And what you're looking at is tracer uptake that's physiologic in the brain, in the kidneys, in the collecting system, and in the bladder. And when we follow these patients over time, these appear to be durable responses. In the first 12 patients we treated in a phase 1 study, we had 9 complete responses just like this. Now, we also observed no toxicity, no grade 3 or grade 4 toxicity. We went to the FDA, and the FDA gave us permission to give this treatment in the outpatient setting. We can manufacture this internally at a price point of $50,000 per patient in our own GMP facility. So if you imagine a future state where for lymphoma patients, they'll be told, you have a diagnosis of lymphoma, you can come to the MD Anderson outpatient facility, get a single infusion, and you'll be cured. That is the future of cellular therapy for this disease using this technology. Now, we took this out to market, and through a pretty sophisticated process, worked with a variety of pharmaceutical companies, biotech firms, VC firms, and 45 suitors for this technology, and landed in a deal with Takeda that we announced in November. This deal, while we can't release the financial terms of it, we believe may be the largest tech transfer deal ever done in US university history. And time will tell as we move the technology forward with Takeda and hopefully bring it to market in an international clinical trial. And we see if the responses that we saw in the phase 1 setting bear out in a larger scale. So as we do this, we're recognizing the need to partner with industry. And we've worked over the last several years to build a whole series of strategic industry alliances. I've listed a few of them here to really give you an idea of the approaches that we're taking to partner with industry and to take science out of our labs and onto a bigger stage to bring financial resources and intellectual capital to MD Anderson to work together with our research teams. Now, big parts of the approaches that we've taken have involved redefining the relationship between academia and industry. This historical model that some of you may be familiar with is where a mid-level faculty member has an idea and they try to navigate that with a mid-level individual in the pharmaceutical or industry company. And both of those individuals need to get traction in their own organizations for the idea to move forward. It's super inefficient. If you look at it from the industry side, it looks like 1,000 points of light coming towards you. Because what the industry goal is, of course, is to get their product to market. And they simply want accrual of high quality data. They have no idea how to choose between these 1,000 points of light. So we've really re-engineered the relationship with pharma, done that really at the level of CEO to CEO. And what that means for me and my executives, Chief Scientific Officer, Chief Strategic Industry Ventures Executive, is 2 trips to Europe every year where we're meeting with the CEOs from Novartis, Roche, Merck, Boehringer Ingelheim, etc. And 2 trips to Japan, one of which really laid the foundation for the Takeda deal that I was describing for you. When we put these Uber agreements into place, they're worked out at the level of the top leaders in the organization. They cover multiple diseases, multiple different protocols, and then we create an interactive joint governance model so that top leaders from both the pharma side and from the academic side are coming together in regular meetings and where the CEOs are talking periodically in phone calls to make sure that we're doing our jobs to remove barriers so that our people can be successful. When you look at the impact of this, you can see that for us, that's really resulted in $475 million of economic benefit to MD Anderson, as well as the intellectual capital that has come with these relationships. And this has been accomplished with a rigorous approach to conflict of interest. As you might imagine, I get asked to go on pharma boards all the time. I say no to that every single time because I don't want to be in a situation where we have these complicated industry relationships and I am devoting time or receiving personal compensation related to pharma board presence. We have the same approach with our executives to ensure that nobody is conflicted. Some of you may have seen the #2 cancer center in the world, where the New York Times is their local newspaper, run into significant issues associated with conflict of interest at the level of chief medical officer, CEO, and even board members. We are rigorously making certain that we can create ethical competitive advantage for us as we navigate these industry relationships. So just some closing thoughts. A series of very unique factors that I alluded to, including our population growth, CPRIT, UT system, and the economy, really position MD Anderson and Texas for unprecedented discovery and innovation. There couldn't be a better time to be in Texas right now. There couldn't be a better place for the #1 cancer center in the world than Texas. MD Anderson is uniquely positioned for some of the reasons that I've been describing related to talent and infrastructure, financial resources, bioresources, and the patient volumes associated with 1,000 patients coming every week, and the evolution of these strategic industry relationships that allow us to bring industry partners to Texas to collaborate in ways that we haven't before and to recognize the reality that academic organizations cannot do it alone. We have to find ways to partner and to seek other sources of both financial and intellectual capital. So I would anticipate on that basis amazing practice-changing discovery to continue to come from MD Anderson as we evolve the organization into the future, and we seek cures to finally eliminate cancer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I live across the street from you. I'm at Rice University, and I've been there all my life. So I take great pride in what you say, okay? And I've watched over the years. I have a question that keeps buying, and that is, say something about the issue of retention of foreign-born and raised scientists in the medical center across the street from my house.
Well, we've got an approach to strategic international collaborations that's been very important to us. We've got very sophisticated international programming that ensures that we can continue to attract the best and the brightest researchers to come to MD Anderson and to work with our teams. As I think everybody is aware, the academic institutions across the country have been in receipt of letters from the NIH regarding intellectual property theft, regarding a whole series of ethical violations, and a series of academic institutions around the country have taken actions against those individuals, including the Department of Justice that's looking at specific aspects of that. From our standpoint, we recognize that we really support the international collaborations. We're building an office of international collaboration, and we'll continue our efforts to recruit the best and the brightest researchers to work at MD Anderson.
Could you say a few words about how you use, if you do, startups in advancing innovations?
Certainly. As we advance technology forward, we go through the same type of binary decision that many organizations go through. In other words, should we create a startup company in order to move this technology forward? Are we best to partner in some way with an industry partner? And the decisions really depend a lot on the details of the IP and the opportunity and how much interest we're getting from different industry partners. And so that decision is really made during the tech transfer process by a pretty experienced team. And we have experiences on both sides, creating startup companies as well as partnering with industry and creating licensing agreements for IP. Yes?
Hi, good morning. Peter Hotez. I'm your neighbor at Baylor College of Medicine.
Hi, Peter.
Great talk, by the way. The government of Australia last year announced they're going to eliminate cervical cancer from the continent of Australia by the year 2030, over the next decade. And they're going to do that through expanding the use of the HPV vaccine. In Texas, which has an economy and population roughly the size of Australia, we're going in the opposite direction. We have some of the worst HPV vaccination rates in the country. We have the 5th highest rate of cervical cancer in the country. And it's happening because we have a very aggressive anti-vaccine lobby and political action committee that has largely blocked uptake of the HPV vaccine. So we're essentially condemning a generation of girls and women to cervical cancer unnecessarily. The question is, and you don't have to answer it all today, but something to think about, how do we fix this?
Well, Peter, thank you very much for your question. It's great maybe to end on the prevention theme, because if we look at the reality of what we know today, 30 to 50% of cancers can be prevented using the known science that we have right now. And I think the first point that I should make is that science should be driving health policy, not dogma. And that it's our job, I think, in the academic community and organizations like this to promote rational thinking as it relates to the evolution of health policy. Here in Texas, as you alluded to, we rank 47th in the nation. And the paradox associated with this, and I alluded to this in my comments, is that we have one of the youngest populations in the nation. Only 2 states have a younger population than Texas, Utah and Alaska. And together they have a population of 6 million. So I wouldn't suggest that they're irrelevant. But the point is that there are a lot of young people in Texas right now who could be protected from the ravages of cancer, half of them are female. And we need to recognize that cervical cancer can be eradicated, and the Australian government has recognized that. When I was in Canada as a health system CEO, they had school-based vaccination for HPV. It was an opt-out. The children came home from school saying, we're going to vaccinate 2 Thursdays from today, and all the kids were vaccinated. And they will be forever protected, not just from cervical cancer, but from 5 other cancers as well. So we need really to anchor ourselves around an approach where science is driving policy and where we can help to beat down the dogma that's associated with Facebook groups and other mechanisms by which social media and other channels really disseminate dogma instead of data and science.
Thanks very much.